Hey guys, SimCoder here, and today we are back. And the reason why I haven't been uploading is because I had a couple of projects that I wanted to work on, and I've had some personal problems that, well, I don't want to get into right now. But yeah, I'm pushing myself to try and get this video out since you guys have been lacking tremendously this video. And yeah, it is a lesson that has to come out, and we have to start wrapping up the What's Up clone project. So yeah, that's why I'm doing this video right now, and I just missed uploading something to YouTube. So let's try to jump right into it. And what we are going to work on today is one of the problems that I talked about in the last lesson, where we finally sent the first notification. And the problem is that right now we are sending a notification hard-coded into to an user, because the notification key is hard-coded into our code. And we can double check that by going to our utils. It's a notification class, and here we are. And as you can see, the notification key, which is the key that lets us send a notification to a specific user, is hard-coded. And so we are going to delete this. We are going to simply pass the notification here through the arguments. But there's a lot of things that you have to do. And the reason is because if we go into the main page activity, which is where we list the chats that we have, and we go into our chat activity, for example, we aren't getting the data on the users anywhere. And that's what we have to do. So we will have to change the code a bit in order to accommodate for this. And this is a quite easy thing to do, but because of the way Firebase works and all databases that are JSON driven, we must do some jumping around to make sure that we aren't wasting time and data. And yeah, so we must do some clever workarounds to make sure that the user gets the information as fast and as inexpensively as possible. Even though I'm going to cut some corners, because, well, the goal of these lessons, and I always try to say this in the beginning of the series, is not to make the thing that's more correct, more efficient, or more cost effective. It's make something that's easy for you guys to understand, even though sometimes the approach might not be the best. Okay, so the things that we are going to change, we are going to change how the chat is created. And to do that, I have some chats that I've created because I've already written the code, and I can show you how it works. Okay, so in the part of the user, it works the same. So each user has a chat child, which has all of the chat's IDs that the user is now following below. Okay, so then in the chat child, you can see that there are a couple of differences. So in the past lesson, or before that, what we had was the chat ID and all of the messages right below. Now we don't have that. We have a child for the info and a child for the messages. So the child for the messages is what we had before below the main child. So it has all of the messages. We didn't change anything on it. It's still the same. The main difference is on the info. So the info will contain the ID of the chat, because that's something that will make the coding a lot simpler, even though we are repeating data. The ID of the child, the last message, and this is something that I'm not going to implement today, but just so that we know, we are going to use this last message, which will be updated anytime a new message is received. And the goal of this is to display the message in the main activity when you display the chat, because that's something that normally chat apps do. We have the last message's timestamp, because I don't know if we are going to incorporate that, but it's just because we can. And then finally, the thing that we are going to implement today really is these child users, and we are going to create a child that will contain all of the users that are in the chat room. Okay, and this will allow us to then go look for the child's notification key and so on. So what we are going to do really is, let's imagine we are this user. We are going to loop through the chat. Okay, we find this ID. Then with this ID, we are going to go in here and we are going to go into the info child. Okay, then we are going to go into the user child and try to find every user that's under here. And I'm doing this already because we have to get ready for when we create groups. And so I'm just looking ahead and trying to figure out what we are going to need. So let's imagine we have a group with 10 people in that chat room. Then we'll have 10 IDs here, and we are going to loop through each and every single one of them and go into their child and get the notification key and other relevant information that we might need. We'll create just a user object. And then we'll create an array list with that user object, which will contain all of the user's information, which we can pass on to the chat activity. Okay, this might sound like a lot of looping around, but yeah, this is what we're going to do. It won't be hard at all. So yeah, let's do it. Okay, so now jumping into the code, we've already removed the notification key from here. It isn't hard-coded anymore, so we can go ahead and close that. I'm going to close the chat activity as well. And actually, no, I'm going to, yeah, let's start right here. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to change is how we get the information from the chat list. Okay, so right now we are going to our chat. Let me just check. Come in here. Yeah, we are going to our chat and getting all of the data that's, I'm going to collapse this. Okay, and we are going to get all of the data that's in there. So all of the chat's IDs. And this part is basically the same. We are going to leave it as is because we just want to get the ID of the chat, and that's exactly what we are doing. But now we want to get the chat data. So let's come in here and say get chat data. And we are going to pass on a variable which will be the chat ID. mchat.getChatID. Okay. We are going to create a method, and you can do this by clicking Alt-Enter and create method in the main page activity. Okay. So now we are in the point where we must go to the chat info. So we get the chat ID and we go up top to the child info. And that's what we are going to do. So I'm going to grab this database reference, paste it in here, call it simply chatDB. And then instead of user, it is chat. And instead of the user ID, it is the chat ID. Okay, and then info, because that's all that we want to know. We don't care about the messages, we just care about the info. Okay, so now we can go right ahead and say mchatdb.add value event listener new value event listener, and on data change we say if data snapshot dot exists, then we can simply first of all get the chat ID. So chat ID equals to nothing, and we'll say if, make this bigger, if data snapshot dot child ID dot get value different from null. And remember to always do this, because if for any reason this child doesn't exist and you try to get the value and parse it into a string, then the app will crash. Then we say that the chat ID is equal to this dot to string. And the reason why you have to get the ID again and not use this chat ID is because, remember, this is an asynchronous task, which means the code will keep on running even though this isn't available yet. So you can think of this like the code is running and it passes this line, it gets to the event listener, and it is like, okay, this event listener, what it says is, okay, I'm going to keep on, you can keep on coding, you can go to the next line, which in this case will be this one. And whenever I receive data, then I'll call this function and it will start. So that's a problem because you lose the chat ID basically. And so we are forced to get it again to make sure that we are getting the right one, even though we might only have one chat, it doesn't matter, we'll lose the chat ID. Okay, so now we are going to simply make a loop, and it will be of the data snapshot dot child users to get all of the users that are in this chat room. Data snapshot user snapshot 2 points data snapshot dot child users dot get children, and this will loop through all of the users in this child, all of the nodes in this child, and return to us the user snapshot. Okay, and now what we are going to do is to loop through the chat array list in order to find the chat that corresponds to this chat ID. Because remember, we don't have access to the chat ID, and even if we had created the chat object and we were using this, we wouldn't be able to use it. So let's simply say mchat iterator. I'm going to remove the iterator because I don't like it. Okay. Mchat, much simpler, chat list, and then we say if mchat dot get chat ID dot equals to the chat ID. That means that we found our chat, and then we can change it accordingly. So now we are going to create a user object, user equals to new user object, and we want it to be just receive the user ID. And to get the user ID, all we have to do is say user snapshot dot get key, because remember, and there is an error, but don't worry, we'll fix it in a second. We want to get, so we are looping through all of the nodes that are in here, and we want the key of each node, okay? And now there's an error, and that's because we don't have a constructor that can accommodate for this. So we are going to create it right now. So right now, as you can see, the constructor that we have in the user object has all of this information, but we don't really care about all of this information. We only care about the UID. So we can simply create another constructor that will create a user object with just UID. Okay, and as you can see there, the error went away. Okay, and now we have to add this user into the chat object. And to do that, we have to first of all create a variable in the chat object of the type array list, user object. So you go to the user object, and if you want to go into a class or wherever in Android Studio without going into your project, all you have to do is click Control and click the left mouse. Okay, so here we are in the chat object. Now what we are going to do is, as I've said, create a private array list, release user object array list equals to new array list. Okay, and that's basically it. Now we can get make the getters for the user object array list. So user object array list get, and user object array list set. We won't be needing setters for this, so I'm just going to leave it like this. We only have getters, and we are going to create a function that will add user objects to our array list. and it is really simple. All you have to do is say public void add user to array list, and it will receive a user object and user, and all it is going to do is to say user array object array list dot add and user, and that's all that we need. Okay, we can actually collapse this and go below, and that's it. We can now simply get out of the user object, and in here I'm also going to delete this, even though we are going to need it in a second. And in here now, what we are going to do is to simply say mchat.add user to array list and user, and that's it. Now we get to the third and final part. So we went through our chats, we went to the chats, we got the info, we got the user's ID, and now we have to get the user's information from the ID. And so from here we are going to, let's imagine we are these 6 whatever ID. So we are going to get all of the information no matter what, but we want to get the UES information, for example. So we are going to go from here to this shell right here and get all of the information, and most importantly we'll get the notification key. Okay, that sounds like a bit, but yeah, this is a really easy way to handle JSON type databases. And yeah, so let's say get users data. We are going to pass on the user object, create method, main page activity, and we are going to simply get the user information. Okay, so this is really simple. Let's create a database reference for this. Database reference and user DB. I believe we don't have any. Okay, we can do that. Firebase database dot get instance dot get reference dot child user dot child and user dot get UID. That's it. Now we simply say muser db dot add value event listener new value event listener, add the semicolon at the end, don't forget that. And now we'll create yet another user object, and user equals to new user object and data snapshot dot get key. This is the ID of the user, so we are pointing to right here in the case of this user. And if you get the key, then we'll get this ID. Okay, so let's go on and let's say if data snapshot dot child notification key dot get value different from null, then we can simply say muser dot set notification key, but we still haven't created the notification key in the part of the user. So I'm going to come in here really quickly and say string with notification key. We can add it. No, we don't need to add it anywhere. We simply need a getter and a setter. So get notification key and set notification key. And for now, that's all that I'm going to care about. I'm not going to deal with anything else, even though we could get the name, but I'll leave that to other lessons. It isn't important right now. So muser dot set notification key, and we simply grab this and say toString. So now we are going to make a loop through all of the chats that we have right here to check which chat has this particular user in their array list. And if it has, then we go ahead and update it to have this user. Okay, and that way we with one call can update multiple chats, and yeah, that's the goal. So let's say mChatObject, mChat, chat list, and then we'll loop through this particular chat array list to see if the user is there. Okay, this isn't really efficient. I believe there are better ways, but it will get the job done, and so let's do it. And user it for iterator, and chat.get user object array list. Okay, and then we simply say if user it dot get uid dot equals to user dot get uid, then we update this user it by saying user it dot set notification key user dot get notification key. And this end user is the one that we created right here, and we'll be able to add more like name, profile image maybe in the future, and we'll change it right here. But for now it is all done. All we have to do now is to say mchat list adapter dot notify data set changed. That's really important, and if you don't do it, then the chat list won't update. Okay, for now that's all. I'm going to remove this notify dataset change, I believe. Yeah, I'm going to, because I want for the chat to only appear whenever everything is done and we have all of the users with their respective notifications key updated. Okay, so for now it is all done in the main page activity, I believe so. Now we'll go into the user list adapter, and this is where is the adapter to display the users in the main page activity. And the reason why we are here is because this is where we create the chat. And as we saw before, we must change how things are arranged. So I'm going to quickly create a function called private void and simply call it create chat. Okay, and it will receive the position of the user that we click on, the position of the adapter that we click on. Okay, better yet, the position of the holder that we click on. That's the way to go, and that way we'll be able to access the user list and do all of the things that we need. Okay, so I'm going to remove this code from here, paste it there, and in here I'm simply going to create call the create chat with the position. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, I'm going to remove the final from here, and instead of handling as final, I'm simply going to come in here and say holder.get adapter position, because I believe that's the right way to do it. And I'm going to treat this variable as final instead of the position. Okay, so, oops, I wanted it to collapse, there we go. Okay, so now let's first of all take care of the info, and then we'll take care of updating the user's database. So this can go down, I mean the Firebase database, not that one. And before that, I'm going to simply come in here and grab this and create a variable out of it. So Firebase database user db equals to this, and I'm doing this because, well, they are both going into this database reference. Only then do they change, so this way the code looks much better. User db, it isn't Firebase reference, database, it is database reference. Okay, there we go. Now we are going to create an hash map out of the position that we got from there. So let's simply say hash map new chat map equals to new hash map. Okay, and we are going to start populating it. new chat map, put first of all the ID. We can make this a bit bigger, okay? The ID, which will be simply the key, yeah, because it is the new ID for the chat. Then we can put all sorts of information, but for now, all that I'm going to put in is the user, is both of the users. So let's say user, and now add a plus, and add the UID of the current user, and set it to true. This line of code will do exactly this. It will place an ID, in this case us. Let's imagine that we are the 6L4 and we created the chat, and it will set it to true. That means that it will be saved. You have to set it something because Firebase, or JSON in general, won't save a node unless it has a value and a key. Okay, so I'll simply set it to true. And let's duplicate this and say for the other user. So user list dot get position, and we'll simply update this database reference that we'll create right now. So database reference chat info db, because remember that's a specific one. Let's say Firebase database.getInstance.getReference.childChat .child's key .child's info, and this is the reference that will update with all of this information, the hash map right now. So update children, new chat map, and then update the users' databases. And that's it. We are creating it, and it is being well created. Now, what we are going to do is we have to pass on the chat object to the chat activity. And because right now we are receiving the chat ID, but we want to get the object corresponding to the chat that we clicked on. And to do that, we are going to go into chat list adapter. And now, instead of creating a bundle and passing on the chat ID, we are going to pass on the corresponding chat object. And that's what we are going to do right now. So we'll have to go into the chat object and the user object, and we are going to do one change in here, because in order to pass on objects through activities, we have to implement the serializable. I'm mispronouncing that, but you'll see how that spells. It is right like this, and make sure both the user object and the chat object have it, otherwise you won't be able to pass objects between activities. Okay, so let's close that in the chat list activity. Yeah, let me just grab it here. Okay, sorry, let's do it. Okay, so the first thing that we can do is to simply forget about the bundle and remove it. And we are going to handle it in a different way. So we are going to say put extra chat object, and this works just the same as the bundle. The difference is that we are putting it directly into the intent and not into a bundle. Okay, chatlist.get folder.get adapter position, and that's it. We don't need to do basically anything else. This is passing on the chat object. Now we have to receive the chat object, and that's where we have to go into chat activity. And now we can forget about the chat ID because we don't need it anymore, but we do need a chat object. So I'm going to keep the chat, I'm going to remove the chat ID. So remove this and simply add chat object, my chat object. Okay, and come in here, and right above we are going to say my chat object equals to between parentheses chat object I dot get serializable, or how you say that, serializable, no, not that one, dot get, I'm not being able to find what we want, so let me just check. Oh, I'm forgetting about one. So get intent dot get serializable extra. There we go. So we have to place the get intent and then get serializable extra, and then simply pass on the name that we gave in the adapter, which in this case is chat object. Make sure it is the same. If make sure all of the capital letters are the same, everything the same, otherwise it won't work. And now we can simply go into the ChatDB and say mChatObject dot get chat ID. Okay, and because this ChatDB is just to get the messages, I'm going to simply say child dot child messages, because remember, messages are stored in here. Okay, and yeah, I'm going to change the name of the database to chat messages DB, just so that we can more easily understand what they mean. And a series of errors popped up right away, and we'll go one by one to try and fix them. So ChatDB change into chat messages DB, make sure you change that. Again, make sure you change this. And let me check chat ID. In here it is mChatObject.getChatID, and that's it. All of the errors are fixed, so now we can focus on changing what needs to be changed. And what needs to be changed is, well, in the chat messages DB, now it is all working because we are pointing to the correct place in the child messages. But in the send updates database with new message, we must do some things a bit different, because right now there are a lot more things that you have to do, or better yet, some more things that you have to do. You have to, most importantly, loop through the users that are in the chat object, find those that aren't equal to our UID, and send a message and send a notification with the new message to those users. Okay, as easy as that. So let's simply do that real quickly. For user objects, muser chat mChat object dot get user object array list. If exclamation point to make it if not muser dot get UID dot equals to our UID, which is Firebase of dot get instance dot get UID, then we simply say new send notification with the message, which we'll build in a second. Let's say the heading is new message, and with the user notification key. This is the part that we worked this lesson for. So muser dot get notification key, and there we go. Now we have to build the message, and that's really simple. Let's simply come in up top and say string message, and because we have two types of messages that don't have a text but have media, and messages that can have both media and text, we have to do an if new message map dot get text different from null. This means that there is a text in the message. Then we simply say message equals to this dot to string. Else we say then message equals to send media, just so that the user knows whenever other users send media. Okay, I'm going to handle it like this. Okay, but apart from that, I believe we are all set. Now we are sending messages, we are sending the notification to the correct notification key. So there is nothing that I can remember that's left to do. Oh, we have to remove this send notification because it makes no sense now. It is in the main page activity and we used it to test in the previous lesson. Okay, so I'm going to deploy this into my personal device because my emulators are acting up a bit and they are both getting the same ID for the notification key, which is a bit strange, but no worries. And I'm going to launch one emulator with my phone and I'm going to try to send a message and see if the notification key appears in the emulator and vice versa, obviously. So yeah, let's do it. Okay, so here we are, and there are a couple of mistakes that we must fix, and they are really simple. In the user list adapter, simply add an S to the end of users because I was looking at the wrong child, and because of this, it wouldn't be able to find users, and there's a problem there. The second problem is that we must add the get UID in the user list when we get the object, because otherwise it won't work as well. We need the UID, simply put. Okay, so now let's jump right into it, and I'm going to try and find the phone 1111, which is connected, which is logged in on my personal phone, my physical device, and I'm going to click it, and everything is created. Let's take a look at this, at the info. Okay, both of these users were added here. Everything is fine until here. And there's an earlier notification there, but no worries. Okay, so here is the chat. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to send a message on my phone. Let's say hello world, the typical one. And send, it appears here and a notification is received, hello world. So yeah, everything is working just fine. Now let's send through here, and because it is on my physical device, I'll have you guys listen to it when I receive it. So let's say hello back, sends, and it should, and there you go. So as you heard, this was my phone receiving a notification with the message hello back. Okay, so now we are done. The notifications are working, and they are also almost working if we have multiple users in the same chat room, which is awesome because now everything is much easier for us. But yeah, this was quite an extensive lesson because we had to rearrange multiple things at the same time. But yeah, now we are ready to go and to go and do everything else that we need. Next, I believe we'll start making some UI adjustments, so showing the new message on the main activity, showing the users' names, images, and all of that, which is complementary. And or maybe yet we'll start with the group messaging. Let me know what you guys want, and I'll do it. Maybe the group messaging would be better, but yeah, no worries. We can do one or the other. We have the time for that. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you for your guys' patience and all of that. So yeah, I hope you are having a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. Ciao.